Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we'll be learning how to make this beautiful shift dress with bell sleeves and a snatched waistline. We'll be using a rope. We'll be attaching a loop at the back to make it have a snatched waistline. So I'm using this flower crepe and plain crepe for this dress. So I'll be folding my fabric into two first of all, and then I'll fold it again into four. So because I'm going to be cutting the front and the back at once. So the front and the back neckline is the same, and we're using the same measurement, so we'll just be cutting everything at once. But we'll later be working on the front to achieve that kimono neckline. So first of all, I'm going to be rolling out a straight line as my starting point. Then I'll be marking my neckline. I'm using 3 inches by 1 inch. Please pardon my shock, guys. I didn't know that this fabric, I knew this fabric was colorful, but I didn't know it didn't show as much as this. So I'm going to be marking half of my shoulder measurements, then I'll be coming down and marking my shoulder slope. I'll connect my shoulder slope now to my neckline, then I'll come down by half of my armhole measurements. So I'll come down also by my bust point measurements and then my half length. Then after my half length, I will come down to mark from my half length to my hip line. I'm using 9 inches, so I'm going to be marking from my half length to my hip line. To get my hip line, I'm using 9 inch. So I'll also proceed to mark my total length of gown. So I'm using 35 inch for this length of gown. You can make it as long or as short as you want, but then I added 1 inch for my seam allowance. After that, I'm going to be bringing down my shoulder measurements to my chest line. Then I'll just rule the straight line. So on my chest line, I will bring down my shoulder measurements and then rule it on a straight line. Then I'm going to be dividing my bust measurement into 4, and I'll add the figure I get there. Then I'll add 1 inch for my seam allowance. You can add 1.5 if you want yours to be a bit freer. So I just added 1 inch for mine. Now I'm going to be dividing my armhole measurements to get my armhole curve. Then I'll divide it into 2. I'll come in by half an inch to get the curve. Then I'll just use my curve ruler to connect those 3 points together. You can also connect it with freehand since we are drafting on fabric directly. So after that, I'm going to be marking 1/4 of my waist measurement as well. So I'll insert the figure that I have. Then I'll add 1 inch for seam allowance. I'll also add an extra 1 inch, making it 2 inches, because the waist, since we are going to be adding loops to tie it at the back, you can make it a bit free. So I added 2 inches to my waist measurements, my seam allowance. I added 1 inch, and then I added extra inch. So for my hip, I'm going to be dividing my hip into 4 as well. Then add my measurements and add my 1 inch. So whatever I have there, I'm bringing it down to my hemline. Then on the hemline, I'm adding 1.5 inch for ease. Then I'll connect everything together. So I just connect from on with you can use your curve ruler or your freehand to connect it, but make sure that everything is smooth. So just connect all our lines that we've marked out together. So just like this, I'm just going to connect everything together. So after connecting, I'm just going to cut out everything now. So guys, thank you so much for 3,000 subscribers. Thank you for all your love and support on all of my videos. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, guys. So after cutting it out, we're going to be separating the two. We'll be putting one aside, and then the one we'll be using to cut out the front is what we're going to work on. So the one we'll put aside is for the back. So now I'm just going to put the front on fold very well, and then I'll be marking from my neckline down to my hemline. I'll be marking 1.5 inch for the kimono neckline that we're going to be doing. We'll be marking 1.5 inch all the way down. So I'll just connect everything all the way to the hem for the kimono neckline. We'll be replacing it with the black crepe fabric. So I'll just be cutting it down straight. So on the upper part of the neck, you can make it a bit slopey so that it will be easy for your kimono neckline when you want to sew it in. But you can still sew it in like this as well. So now I'll just proceed to join. First of all, I'll go and join my shoulders together before coming back to work on the dress. So I'll first of all go and join my shoulder, the front and the back. I'll join the shoulder together. So after joining the shoulder, I'm just going to be marking out my waistline for the both sides. Then from the waistline, I'll be going up by 1.5 inch, coming down by 1.5 inch. At those 3 points, I'll be having my loop. So for the loop, you can cut a long strip of fabric, just put it on fold like this, unfold again, and then you just sew it. Yeah, that's what I used to achieve this. So you'll be cutting 6 pieces of the loops since we are going to be joining it at 3 points. Those 3 points that were marked. So we'll be repeating the same process for the both sides of the waist. So just cut out your 1.5 inch loop each in 6 pieces. 3 is going to be on one side and 3 is going to be on the other side. At those points that were marked 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, then I'll just pin it down first of all. So I'll just be pinning it down. Repeat the same process that we have here on the other side. So I'll just pin down the dress as well. I'll just pin it down before going to the sewing machine to sew it at once. So we'll do it for the other side. So after sewing it, this is how it's going to look like. This is how it's going to look like. I just pinned it down first of all before going to the sewing machine. Now I've gone ahead to sew it now. This is what it's looking like for the both sides. Now we're going to be working on the neckline. So on the opening the neckline, we're going to be measuring round the neckline from the top to the bottom. We'll measure everything that we have so we'll know what we are working with. So I'm just going to be measuring everything round. So after measuring, we cut out 3 inches, but on our fabric, we are going to be cutting out 3.5 inches because we are going to be joining it with 1/2 inch. So the width of this is 3.5 on fold, which means it's 7 inches, but I folded it into 2. So the 7 inches now is 3.5 like this. It's on fold because we are going to be sewing the middle of it. When we get there, you understand what I mean. So I'm going to be getting I will fold it into the length of it into 2 to be able to get the middle. So this is 3.5. So the length of this strap, I'm going to be folding it into 2 so I can get the middle points to be able to know where to start attaching it to the neckline of my dress. So I'm just ironing it to have a crease line there so I'll know where the middle is. So I just notched it as well just to be sure. So now this, I'm going to open it up. So when you open it up, this is what you are going to have. Remember I told you it was on 7 inches. 7 inches, so like this. So now I'm going to mark the opening of my neckline. So for the opening, I'm using 12 inches so that you'll be able to pass through your neck. You can make it as low or as high as you want, but it shouldn't be lesser than 11 inches. It might not be able to pass through your neck. So I've gone ahead to sew that place downwards, leaving the 12 inches. So I've sewn it down. This opening now is my 12 inches. So this one will fit my neck perfectly. So now I'm going to also mark the middle part of the neckline of the dress. At the back, I'm putting everything on fold, then I notch the middle. So now what I'll be doing is I'll be attaching the neckline. I'll be putting it on fold. You can first of all iron the 1/2 inch on both sides of this kimono. Of this kimono collar. I should have done that, but I totally forgot. The ironing of the 1/2 inch will just make it easier for you to sew. But I've been inserting a clip of a previous top that I made with the kimono neckline that was way easier because I ironed it in. So also I sewed it from the outside inside. I'm supposed to be sewing it from the inside outside. I will insert the clip for you to get a clearer understanding of it. But you can do it this way, but it's just the other pattern is just way easier. It's just to sew it the other way instead of sewing it this way. It's just to sew it facing outside. But I'll just insert a clip of it. So now I've gone ahead to sew it. Now I'm going to be folding my seam allowance to cover the rough edges round. So this is why I told you that the other pattern is going to be easier. So but you can do it this way as well, just that it's going to be a bit difficult to sew it. So the other clip is what I will be inserting for you to understand. Now this one I sewed it outside. I noticed the half-inch that I ironed already. Then I sewed the collar to it outside first of all round outside. Then I'll just put it on fold. By the time I'm done sewing, now this is what I have. So I will be able to see what I'm sewing. It's just for me to pin it down and then I'll sew it round. This is way more easier. That's why I said you should do it this way. So I'll just sew it round. So I think you should use this method. So now this is the final outcome of the dress. I'm going to be cutting out the excess. Remember where I had an excess there? My fabric wasn't enough, but I attached to the crepe, so that's why you're having those seam allowance, those seam lines there. So after this I'm going to be working on the sleeve. So I went ahead to hem the bottom part of the dress, and then I came to measure round the armhole of the dress to be able to cut my sleeve. So I had 9 inches around the armhole. So I'll be using the crepe fabric for this sleeve. So I'll just go ahead and put everything on fold. I'll still be folding it on 4 parts to be enable me cut everything at once. So this is how I folded it. 2 already here, then I'll fold it like this. So I'll be cutting out my sleeve. So first of all, I'm going to be marking 4 inches. Then on that 4 inches, I'll mark my round armhole, which is 9 that I had. Then I'll just connect it to the tip with a straight ruler like this. Sorry about my chalk. I'll just connect it with a straight ruler. Then on that straight line, I'll just make this thing a bit clearer. Then on this straight line, I'll divide it into 2. So I'm going to mark the length of the sleeve I'm using. I'm using 27 inches. So you can make it as long as you want. So on this part, I'm going to be marking my 9 on that straight line, and I divided it into 2. So from that division is what I'm going to be using as a guideline to connect my armhole curve. Then I got my 9 inches. So I added 1 inch for my joining allowance. So I'm just going to bring it all the way down. I didn't add any shape to it, but you can add it. If you want yours to be a bit fitted on the bicep, you can add your bicep measurement. So I'm just going to cut it out, and then I'll notch the middle of it. So I'll just go and insert it to my dress. So I've gone ahead to sew it around my dress. So this is what we have. I just hemmed around the bottom of the dress and the sleeve as well. So I've gone ahead to also sew a belt that I'll be attaching, that I'll be using to tie the back of my dress. So this is how it's going to look like. So this was the final outcome of the dress. So thank you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on my next tutorial. Bye.